Thank you. Welcome, Asif.
Hey, right.
We're going to start. How many people got to see Maradona yesterday? Okay. Good.
Not bad, well done.
No. So we won't give spoilers away. Let's start with Maradona. In terms of gaining kind of the most important thing, access, how did that come about?
So, hello everyone, by the way. Thanks for coming. Good to be here. I guess with Maradona being the third doc that I made, what had helped was that I'd made the others. And so Diego had seen Senna. He's a big fan of Ayrton Senna, and had seen and liked the film. And while my producers, James Geris and Paul Martin, were kind of negotiating a deal with his people and his lawyer, Amy went on an awards run and won an Oscar. And so then...
And a BAFTA.
And a BAFTA. And it was a BAFTA that he... annoyingly, he posted the picture of the Oscar on his website. I'm sure also it said he won a BAFTA. And which Senna did obviously as well, and he loved that. Okay. I'm quite tired.
Sorry.
So that helped, that he'd seen the films or heard of the films. And then, because at that point I haven't met him, I don't get to talk to him. I'm just leaving it to the producers. And they were trying to tie down this footage that somewhere existed that had been shot about Diego Maradona, and then they had to get him on board. And so the process, when dealing with all of these famous people, it's going to be you're trying to license their image rights, and so they want to know, well, what have you done? Why should everyone wants to make a film about me? Why should it be you? So that helped, having had a bit of a track record. And then it also comes down to finance. Let's be honest. That was key. That James and Paul were able to kind of get the finance in order to kind of get a deal for us. Just for me to get to the stage saying, well, I'll now pay attention. Because I've been through enough of this now where I don't really do anything until I know it's real. And then I will start working and start talking to everyone.
So it's where, and I should have asked from the onset, the genesis of Maradona, where did it come from? Has that been in your mind for years, or?
I mean, yeah, more so than Senna and Amy, but because I'm a big football fan, so I can remember him playing. And so this story kind of has a backdrop of me knowing about him, and I think it was after I was at the Royal College of Art around the late 90s. I read a really good book about Diego Maradona and his life, and all of the kind of things and scrapes he got into. And that book was probably the moment when I thought, God, wouldn't it be great one day to make a film about him? Now, at that point, I was just making short films and short fiction films still. I'd never made a doc of any form, and it was long before Senna. And so, but that was when I first thought, I think he's got all of the kind of elements for a great movie. Then it goes away. It comes back again post-Senna. A producer, Paul, contacts me in 2012, and I was doing a film for the London Olympics at the time. And he shows me some material and says, you've done Senna, would you be interested in a film about Maradona? I know you like football. But I was like, I've just done a Brazilian sporting hero. I don't want to go straight into the Argentinian sporting hero. So I sort of said, I don't think the time's right. And it went away again. Then we did Amy and various other things I was doing. And then it felt, actually, if I'm going to do a third film, this is different. This is about getting old. This has not got that tragic ending. So we're going to have to figure out how to tell the story. And he's alive, and I get to meet him and talk to him. So I liked the idea of doing it as a challenge. And he's tricky. I knew that. Before meeting him, before anything to do with it, I'm like, this is a difficult character. So if we're going to do it, it's only worth doing it because it's a new challenge. And so that was how it came about.
With him being, you say, a difficult character, were those preconceptions built up from what you'd seen growing up and from kind of the press and so forth, or is this kind of from known people? No,
it was just from things that I wouldn't be thinking about him, and then I'd see an image in a website or on a website or in a magazine, and I literally would go, that's not Maradona. It was one of those shocks of seeing him in a really bad way when he became really quite big and obese, and he was in Cuba or somewhere. And that was it. I didn't know what he was up to. I wasn't really following him. I'm not kind of that type of fan. So that was it. It was just like the information would come through, and I know things were in a bad way, and occasionally with Maradona, you hear, oh, he's dying, he's over. Oh, he's back. Oh, he's really sick, he's in hospital. It's like, this is it, there's lots of people outside. Oh, he's got a TV show, look. And that's Maradona, the guy dies and then comes back, dies and comes back. So, like, Jesus got nothing on him. He is, and that's the kind of great thing, but that's the hard thing. Because that's then, when you're making the film, that's the bit you're going, this is really tricky. How do we end this? So then one of my regular questions to everyone I met and interviewed, in his family, his children, his biographers, and his trainer, is like, where does this film end? Because I'm really struggling. and they would like just laugh. It's like, good luck, good luck. There are people who've written entire books about him, press send to their publisher. The next day he does something, and they're like, oh, can you write a new one? Because he's now in Cuba or somewhere, So that was one of the challenges for sure.
So I suppose then it comes to, if with someone still being there and there being no ending, what do you focus on and how do you pick what you focus on? And does that obviously depend on the footage you had? As you kind of made the decision to, as with Amy and Senna, go with a style that is...
Go with do the research as wide as possible. Research everything, no matter how much pressure there is to say, you're a director, you should know what your story is. And one of the interesting things, and as we'll get into this conversation of coming from a fiction background, when you have an idea, you write a script, you cast it, you raise the money, you shoot it. The thing that I've really enjoyed about making documentaries and documentaries for the cinema and on a certain scale is, I guess I have a character. And generally, with Senna and Amy, I had an ending, which most people knew. If you knew nothing about Senna, he was wasn't he a racing driver? And he died. And Amy Winehouse, oh yeah, she was in a really bad way, she was a singer. And with Diego, it's like, oh yeah, he got really messed up and he's got a cocaine problem. He was once a footballer, wasn't he? That's kind of what people know. So it's very interesting because it's the opposite of fiction, where you don't want to give away the ending before you start. That's the whole thing. Here, it's all about the journey. It's all about finding out what was the journey and their path and who were they really and who were they before and what happened. Why did they become that person? And that's what I have been really interested by. Generally, the characters that I'm interested in are kind of more edgy or maybe not particularly lovable at the beginning, at the outset. And the process is with Amy was the first film where there was never a piece of paper. There was no treatment, there was no document, there was no log line. It was like, we're going to make a film about Amy, we'll work it out. Just let me talk to everyone, leave me alone for 2 years. Maradona was a bit of the same. We're making a film about him, I don't know what it is, I don't know where it begins, I don't know where it ends, but we'll spend time researching everything, and then at the ending, we'll have a film. And so I researched him in Buenos Aires, growing up, playing for his first team, in Boca Juniors, Barcelona, right the way through to latter Naples period. My producer, James, was always like, the stories about Naples, stories about Naples, stories about Naples, and he was right, but to tell the story of Naples, I need to know what happened before, and I need to know what happened after, and a lot of the information in the final film is using the people I met when I researched Buenos Aires, and they're the voices in the film, and what happens afterwards, it's somehow you've got to get that in to the narrative, even if you're focusing on the Napoli era, which is the peak Diego Maradona bit, the bit when he becomes the greatest footballer in the world and the place where all of the problems start and happen and become a problem, and everything that comes after is the kind of residue of everything that happened in Naples.
Let's take a clip of Maradona in Naples at a press conference. I should have said from the onset, sorry, that we will actually be taking questions throughout for this session. So if you do have any, please just put your hand up and we'll get a mic to you at an appropriate time. I suppose kind of that clip is a tiny, tiny, tiny glimpse into how his life changed from an extremely young age, from the age of when we see from 15, kind of being known as a footballer, and then obviously to that rise in Naples and this level of kind of idolatry, and he was a god, considered a god there. In terms of then shaping a narrative around someone that has had this godlike status, and then asking them to kind of trust outside their kind of inner circle when they've had kind of the tragedy that's ensued with it. How did you get him to kind of trust in you to tell the stories? Obviously, you've said there's been many people that wanted to do it beforehand.
See, the one thing about dealing with Diego Maradona is he'll never be the guy that you expect him to be. So the idea, I've had it kind of few times where people ask me, so how did you get Diego to kind of trust you to make the film? You're like, partly I'm like, does he even know I'm making this film? And that happens while I'm talking to him. I'm like, did anyone tell him? And I've met him a few times. I still don't know if he knows who I am. And then occasionally I would get a bit embarrassed and be a bit British about it, and like, oh, maybe I should tell him I did that film Senna, because he said he liked it. Did he? I think he did. And then he'd come up, oh, you made Senna? Oh, I love that film. That's great. This is great. And then I might meet him next time, and I think he's forgotten, hasn't he? He doesn't know. So then I'm like, I can't bring it up again. That's a bit embarrassing. But then luckily the sound recorder said, because in his interview, he would bring up Ayrton Senna and how much he liked him. And I'm going, does he know I made the film? Is he like messing with me? And then the sound recordist, who was, in this case, Luca from Naples, who I brought along specially because I'm like, at least they can get along and that will keep him happy and engaged. And they did get along really well. And Luca said, he made Senna. He's really? Yeah. So you're dealing with someone who, like, I'm put in a room in his house. I go to his house. He's in Dubai. He lives on a giant palm tree, like a man-made one with houses, not like... Yeah. Second fond on the left is where his street. And when I go in there, you just don't know who you're going to meet. You just don't know what you're dealing with. And then interview to interview, you don't know who you're going to meet. Because he's older and he's been through a lot of stuff. So it was never like, I'm going to kind of explain to you, and please, I need to earn your trust. It's just like, can I just keep you engaged for long enough to get through my questions? Because in the end, I guess, the experience was much more like making a film like Senna and Amy. It's like, I'm making a film without you, really, aren't I? I'm just going to make the film, and then at some point, I'm going to show it to you, hopefully. At some point, I'm going to ask you about the things that I think are going to be in the film.
So yeah, so at that point, when you have kind of your time with him, how far are you into the actual kind of construct of the film? And so, and how do you know what to ask if you've got, limited time? So
let's say that Amy kind of came to the end of its wonderful journey around the spring of 2016. So this film, we're in 2019, aren't we? So it premiered at Cannes, so just after spring, kind of in 3 years later. So it was a journey of 3 years. I think James and Paul were kind of cracking that deal around the time of the Oscars, so March 2016. That's when we got the green light. There was about 6 months of research, archive team being put together, just researching everything, people going off to Naples and talking to people. Honestly, at that stage, I'm not really in. I'm not on it. They just need to do research and find material, find out who the voices are, read all the books. Most of them are in Italian or in Spanish, and so our team was being put together by Raquel, who's been a kind of key kind of line producer on all the films on Senna, Amy. And a lot of the crew that we work with, we've got people that have been working with us for a long time in the company now. So Raquel maybe came on kind of as a kind of, I can't remember what the official title was, but she wasn't a line producer on Senna, but we ended up getting rid of the line producer and keeping on Raquel. And then she stayed with us. And other people started as work experience who were just there to do translation. And Fiammetta is one of those people who was there to do translation, and she was on work experience because she spoke Italian. But then now she's like one of the kind of, I think she's the archive producer for everything in Italian. She had to do with all of the Italian voices, everything that happened in Naples, all of the footage. We have Lena, who I don't know if Lena's here, but Lena did all of the Spanish language stuff, and she was dealing with anyone that spoke Spanish. So we had a core team that were put together, and I wasn't there for that. Raquel, James, people put that together. I went off and did Mindhunter. I did a TV show in America around that time. Then around, I think it was September, October 2016, 6 months into the process, it's time to talk to Diego. So we go there to meet him for the first time, and everyone wants to meet Diego Maradona. This is the recurring theme that happens in life. So I'm like, I'm going to go and talk to him, and the producer's like, we don't want to come, we want to meet him, okay. And then you're like, okay, we don't know how much time we're going to get with him, so maybe I should bring a camera. So we bring a camera, and then we need a sound recordist, and we need a translator, and then when you get to, he's in Dubai, you need a local fixer with a permit. Suddenly there's like 7, 8 of us. And Dubai's not cheap, and we were there only because we were told this is a good date for him. So we fly to Dubai, not cheap, you get there, And they're like, he's not in a good mood today. Today's not good. Come tomorrow. Okay, right. Tomorrow comes along. No, actually, no. Try next day. Okay, fine. So we're booking a studio, we're booking the spaces. 5 days we're there, we haven't got anywhere near him. Then it becomes like, do we extend the trip? Or I think I'm going to go home. I think I'm not going to do this hanging around. So I got in contact with one person in his team and said, can I just say hello to him? I've been here for 5 days. I would just like to say hello. And so we managed to talk myself into the house, got there, and I literally had 5 minutes. He came downstairs, shook hands, said, we're going to make a great film together, and he went. And that was a week, and that was a big chunk of our budget. So I was like, we're never going to do this ever again. No one else is coming. The next trip, which was now a year later, almost. Wow. A year later.
So how far into the film making construct?
So now we are probably, at this point, my editor, Chris King, hasn't started. He was off doing another film. So he started the following May, 2017. And we then started, and really, so Chris and I had 2 years full on working together, where I was doing interviews, going to Buenos Aires, going to Naples, going to Dubai. Chris is cutting, screening the film. It's too long, it's a mess, we don't know what we're doing. And then bit by bit, kind of refining it. So I then went back, having got a rough cut and a kind of idea of what it is. With Lena, just the two of us, I'm now sound recording myself. And we meet with Diego, we get into the house, and we actually get some time with him. And he's not great that day, I have to say, and quite hard at times to understand what he's saying. Now, Diego generally speaks his own language. I think this is an important detail. If you speak Spanish or if you are from Argentina, he just creates terms and words and has a way of phrasing because he is a man from the street. He is from Villa Frita, which is this really kind of rough place on the outskirts. So even Argentinians are like, he just made that up. Whatever he said, that's a new word which becomes part of language. And he's done this a lot. He's famous for inventing terms. So when we're listening to him, you're like, I don't know what he's saying. I'm getting translation. And in this case, Diego doesn't wait for somebody. You wait for him. So I was speaking English, Lena translates in Spanish, he answers, she translates to me, he's like, I'm bored. If you're going to have to translate back to this guy, then I'm not hanging around. So that interview, you could see, okay, this isn't going to work either, right? We got through it, but we got far enough into it for him to get engaged, for me to say, can I come back tomorrow? And he's like, yeah, come back tomorrow.
Did he mind what you were asking him at any point?
I haven't even asked a difficult question. I haven't even asked an easy question yet. Some of the easy ones, he's like, don't ever bring her name up again. I'm like, okay. What about this guy? And he's like, he robbed me. He stole from me. I don't want to hear about that guy. Like, I'm literally on the starters. Maybe I won't. I'll save those ones. I'll come back tomorrow and I'll do the bankers. I'll just bang out the kind of happy ones, easy ones. Yeah. Talking about his mum, talking about his family, talking about his sisters, talking about growing up, talking about his love of football, talking about, okay, it's going well, it's going good, this is good. But even when it's going good, with him, 90 minutes, weirdly enough, is his time span. When he gets bored after 90 minutes, and it's like, it's over. You could just tell there's a moment when it's like, it's over. And I don't know why, but his energy level drops off. And then he's like, it's done. So then you're thinking, okay, it's going to be another 6 months before I see him. And that's what would happen. I'd go away back to London with something. Now, I don't speak Spanish, it's my problem, but that would then mean I have to really wait until that's all translated and subtitled for me to really know what the hell was going on in the room. So the next trip becomes a different, like bit by bit, we added a member of the team. So then I brought my kind of, by now I was doing lots of interviews in Buenos Aires I'd been to, and Naples, so I had a really good sound recordist. So next time I brought an Italian, Neapolitan sound recordist, so who could be in the room and who kept him happy, and then we had live translation. By the end of it, we had this setup where Diego's sitting on his sofa. I don't know if he was watching Boca Juniors at the time, but he did have the TV on quite a lot of the time. Lena and I are still there. I've got an Italian Neapolitan sound recordist. I've got a laptop with Skype on, which my team in London are listening to the interview, and just if we've got something wrong, if we need to check a date, they can type. And I can see on the computer, and I can type back, and he's not worried about that. While he's answering in Spanish, I've got a phone on to someone, Laura, who's in Buenos Aires, who speaks Argentinian Spanish and understands him, on a WhatsApp call. You can see how high our budget is. And she's calling me back on another phone in my pocket, which is in my ear, so I can get live translation. So we're in Dubai, the recordist is from Naples, my team are in London listening in, and the interpreter is in Buenos Aires. And it was clockwork, it was great. And it worked, and there was no pauses, and I could, for the first time, interrupt him. When I asked a question about his son, and he answers about Sepp Blatter, I go, that's great, but sorry, can we just come back? And he's not used to someone interrupting him, you know, and that's when he got a bit annoyed, and then I'd bring him back to something tricky, and he'd be getting a bit moody, and you can see, and I'm like, I've got to do it. This could be my last interview. We've got to finish the film at some point. And that was the point when he did look me in the eye and say, you've got a real nerve asking me these questions. To ask me these questions to my face, you have a real nerve. And I'm like nodding, and then the translation. And then just as I get kind of hear from Laura and Sam what actually he's saying to me, because I'm smiling away like going, and then he goes, but for that I respect you. Because, you know, most people, they wait till I turn my back and then they ask the question. So I'm like, okay, we're cool. I did Senna, you know. It was one of those moments that was kind of classic. And then I was like, can I just ask you the question again? Because I don't know if we actually got the answer. And we kind of got there in the end, but it was tricky. It was tricky. And in my opinion, we may beg to differ on this, because by the end of that interview, he did get a bit peed off with me and did the old, I've already given you so much of my time. I was told we were only going to talk for this much, and you've already asked me to talk for this long. And in my mind, I'm like, I think you still owe me an interview. Oh, I think we've only done 2 out of 3, if you add up the minutes. Because you know when I would go away and say, can I come back tomorrow? I still think we're on the first interview, because we haven't done 3 hours. He's like, this is interview number 2, isn't it? So we had this slight issue with his people, and actually, I think we were in right. He still owes me one. Yeah. And my intention was to show him the film, unfinished. And then say, so what do you think? Duck. Then ask him, and then interview him about what he's seen. But we never got to that moment.
And do you know if he's seen the film now?
He hasn't seen it.
He hasn't?
Well, no, I haven't given him a copy. And I tried, like that first meeting, we spent a week trying to get to say hello. The end of it was, I'm trying to show him the film, and he's in Dubai, but then he's not in Dubai. I get told he's moving to Belarus. So I look on the map going, where's Belarus? It's closer than Dubai. Yeah. It's probably cheaper as well. So we were going to go there, and then he was like, no, he's in Colombia. Okay, I don't know if I can go to Colombia. And he was going to be in Moscow for the World Cup. Great. Come to Moscow. Now, I've been to Moscow. It's not cheap at the best of times, and not during the World Cup. I'm like, I don't think this film and you during the World Cup is a good thing, as we saw.
But there are, elements of that, though.
Well, we were still editing. That's why it's in the film, because I was watching that. And then, in the end, he was going to go to Argentina. We booked tickets to go to Argentina to show him the film in Argentina. The day before we fly to Argentina, I get told he's in Mexico. He's taken a job in Mexico, in Sinaloa, which, if you know, Mexico is quite rough, tough place. Perhaps managing a team in the 2nd division owned by El Chapo. So I haven't been there, funnily enough, yet.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I had a stupid idea saying, let's bring him to the premiere. If we can get into Cannes, he'll come to Cannes. Everyone would go to Cannes. He didn't come to Cannes.
Do we have any questions at this? Oh, God, wow. Okay. This hand just there went up first, yeah.
Hello, good morning.
I like that.
Thank you so much. I'm so privileged to watch the film today. I've been a fan of your films since the first time I watched Amy back in my city in Alexandria in Egypt. I'm not a fan of football at all. I'm just a fan of
You're bringing up Mo Salah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll do that. I had just a question related to the fact that you are making a film for the first time about a still living character. Mm-hmm. And he is probably, hopefully, going to watch the film at a certain point. How did you, if you had any sort of self-censorship tackling certain subjects? Because anyway, when you are tackling, I don't know, drug addiction with Amy Winehouse, she's not going by any means to feel intimidated watching the film afterwards. But with Diego, or any character in general.
This is what I mean, that everyone here, all filmmakers and people, you would think this is going to be tricky because, one, how are you going to get him to open up about this stuff? How are you going to deal with this stuff? They haven't seen the film. They were not that interested in seeing the film. So with Maradona, it's always the opposite of everything you would assume. When you have a really famous person, they're going to worry about final cut or control. I don't know if they know who I am sometimes, you know. So, and they can't in any way kind of say, don't put that in a film and don't show that if they are not that interested in seeing the film. So we have got to the stage where we can make a film, and what I'm really happy to do is during the film, I always try to show it to the contributors before I finish it. I want to, because if I've got something wrong, I want to know. But also, if there's an issue, I want to have that conversation privately, not on social media. But it wasn't, in this case, it's just not been an issue. You know, the funny thing is, so because he hadn't seen it, we're like, okay, Can's going to be a bit mad showing it to him there, but, you know, he's going to get a lot of love from the French audience. We were worried about the trailer coming out and like, oh, he might not like this in the trailer or that in the trailer. Trailer came, he loved it. First clip went out, he loved it. That's what we hear. Then the poster came out. I don't know if you've seen a poster. There's something in the poster about like rebel, hero, hustler, God. Right? The poster's cool, and someone put these lines in. An Argentinian journalist goes to Diego and said, have you seen a poster? He goes, yeah, the poster's great. Have you seen what they called you? They called you a hustler. And a hustler, and whoever this person is, who also has never seen the film, translated the word hustler, however they translated it, and he's like, I'm not a thief. He's calling me a thief. I'm not a thief. I never stole from anybody. I don't like this film. I'm never going to see this film. Nobody see this film. So there we are worrying about the film and showing him the film and worrying about the trailer and the clip, and one word on a poster that I didn't necessarily pick or worry about that much. That's what you're dealing with, you know. So the latest was he didn't like the Spanish translation of that word on the poster. But at some point, it is all going to seep to him because people in his family and people around him have seen the film. And so that's what I did do, is I did check it with Signorini and Arcucci, his biographer, and his ex-wife and his children and people in Naples. And they all say, it's tough. This is a tough film on Diego, but it's honest. And they all say it's all legit. And so I'll show it to him at some point. I think it'll be good for him one day to see it, but it has to be us two privately in his living room, I think.
There is a lot of compassion there as well, though, towards him. You kind of do leave, well, I personally left kind of a little bit heartbroken for him.
I feel for him, you know. I do think he's actually, you know, quite a lost, vulnerable character who gets thrown into a situation that I don't think he knows where he's going and what he's getting into, and I don't know how anyone can survive.
Like, even that clip is like a gladiator pen, you know.
It's full-on gladiator, yeah. And, you know, it's kind of amusing. And he's just had a tough time before that in Barcelona, and he will have many tough times after this. So I think, I think the idea is just to try to understand these people and say, if you had a little bit of that, you'd be lucky if you survived.
We had lots more. This gentleman here, and then we'll get a mic to the lady in the red top there.
Hello. Hi, Asif.
Hey.
Nice to be here, hearing you. I'm from Guadalajara, Mexico, so we have a vibrant festival. I'm wondering if you will be interested in having the film there. You know,
maybe that's the way to show it to Diego.
Yeah,
if you
of
can
course.
get him to come, I'll come.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure. You know,
Okay,
it's
cool.
very close to Culiacan, where he is coaching the.
Who knows if it's going to be the next year? But yeah, maybe we should talk about that separately. But that would
Of
be
course.
cool. Yeah.
And by the other hand, the use of archive on your films is extraordinary. How do you do to not get lost? Do you have like a technique, a methodology to using archive?
It's a good question. I mean, so I think this is linked to kind of various things that we'll be talking about today, I guess. My background is in fiction films, and the fiction films that I made before I made Senna, and even the short films that I made were very visual. Very much the whole idea was always to try to tell the story with images and pictures. So I suppose it's always been interested in kind of Asian cinema or European cinema, and the kind of filmmakers that really inspired me were very much, you know, it wasn't dialogue driven. And so I was doing that all the time in the movies that I wrote and I directed, including my first film, The Warrior, but even pre that, I did a short film, The Sheep Thief, with street kids. So there was always this idea of I was making films that were fiction films, but I was trying to make them almost feel sometimes quite naturalistic or documentary-like. So there's always been this kind of space somewhere in the middle. When I did Senna, that was the beginning of this process. That was the first time I really made a documentary. And what's interesting is with all of these films, sometimes there's something that goes wrong. and there's an issue, there's a problem. And I'm kind of quite a positive person generally, and I like kind of thinking on my feet. And when something goes wrong, somehow to try and make a virtue of it. So with Senna, what happened was we were starting to make this film, and it took a long time to do the deal between the Senna family, the studio was Universal Pictures, working title, Formula One authorities who were run at the time by Bernie Ecclestone. These are not easy people to kind of do an agreement with. And I was told we were about to make it, and I started on that film, and it took 8 months, I think, for that contract to get done. And in that 8 months, we were not financed. I wasn't being paid for 8 months, and I was working on it. I didn't have any money to hire an editor. So it was one of those things where I kept being told, oh, it's going to be next week, a bit like waiting for Diego, next week, whatever. And during that time, all I did was look at the footage. I would just go, I did have an Avid in Soho, and I would go there, and I'd just look at the footage, and I'd study the character, and I'd try to do my homework and my research. Just me, really, ripping stuff off YouTube. You know, the only way we could do it, because we didn't have any material yet. That 8 months really has kind of changed my life in a way, if you think about it, because out of that period, I had this gut instinct of, I think there's a really interesting film here. I think there's an amazing middle, there's an amazing character, there's a rivalry, there's an ending. I don't know what the beginning is yet, and I find it quite moving. And I just got a feeling this is like, and I'm interested in all the films and kind of breaking rules if possible, or pushing the genre. So my first feature, The Warrior, was not in English. Okay, it was made in India with Indian actors and street kids, and it was not in English, which in 2000, 2001 was not really the done thing for British feature films to not be in English.
But it won Best British Film at the BAFTAs.
And Best Debut Film, and was nominated for Foreign Language Film. So it won Best British and was nominated for not in the English language. So that idea of kind of pushing the genre or the boundaries. So with Senna, my idea was, what if we just don't do interviews? What if I don't build it around talking heads? So we started on that film, and the key thing is I couldn't interview him. So I'm going to end up interviewing everyone else, giving me their opinion of him 20 years after. And I thought, what if he tells the story himself? What if he's the narrator? What if we can do it in such a way that if you know the story, you know where it's going? If you don't know the story, you don't even know where it ends up. So that was an instinct, which wasn't simple to get everyone to buy into. You know, history changes the way people remember things, but honestly, it was really tough, and it was a couple of years of fighting to get everyone to buy into that idea, because you make docs, you go and interview people. If not, why do we need you? You know, we just need lots of editors and researchers. We might as well get rid of you. And that was kind of the vibe. But we got through it. You know, it was hard. It was 5 years, and we kind of constructed, we were making it up slightly as we were going along. But that's what happened. And with Amy, I had a similar situation. And with Amy, as well, how do we tell this story? And with Amy, the idea was her lyrics. I knew she was a great singer. I had her albums. I really never listened to her lyrics. I never read her lyrics. And that moment when I asked someone to send me her lyrics and I started just reading them, having done a bit of research and thinking, this is her voice. This is amazing. This is really powerful and moving. And every single song is about somebody that I'm now looking at footage of. And so the linking of that, her voice, because when she became famous, she stopped talking, really. That was the big idea. So Senna, it was like, just go with the moment, go with the character, trust him. He's so eloquent, he's so powerful. We don't need someone telling me he was a great driver. I have to show you he's a great driver. I don't need someone telling you, oh, he believed in God. He should talk about it. And there was also a really important moment where he would give interviews in English, talking to the English speakers, and then he was speaking Portuguese, and he gave a very different interview. And I thought, that's interesting. He's talking to his people in one way, and the English another way, and that was interesting to find what's the true voice. And so that's really what happened. Amy became about, how do we get her voice across? Somewhere in this room, her good friend Nick is here, and he was a really good person I met who told me about Amy, and then who was the person who's there in the beginning of the film, and who shot all of that early amazing footage. And that's when I thought, oh, God, she's amazing. She's so funny, she's so intelligent. But to get to that material, I had to earn Nick's trust, and I had to earn the trust of her other friends when she was younger. So with Diego, by then we had the process sort of worked out, and I knew that this footage was somewhere out there that was filmed about him in Naples. The issue was, how do we put it all together, and how much do I need of him, and how useful is the guy? Even though he's alive, his version of events may not sync up with what I'm seeing in the footage. And so we were kind of lucky that they were not hands-on, because it'd be a very different film, I think. And I'm importantly, making a film about a person who's not around anymore. You know, who he is now is quite different to the person that arrived in Naples. And so that was an interesting, I was very long-winded. I hope it actually answered your question. I don't know. Forgot the question.
Hiya. I'm really interested in, you know, the universal themes that come across in your documentaries. And I was really wanting to know, like, what's your creative research aside from biographical research? Like, what do you read, or, you know, what sort of stuff are you? What inspires you?
I think it's a really, really, really interesting question, because I suppose I start off, often I'm hired to make these films. You know, Senna, I'm a hired director. My job is, during it, to make them personal. So something in the character I kind of latch onto, or something becomes personal to me that it could be that I came up with the idea of making these films, but mostly I'm talking to my producer, and I get offered things and I go, no. You go, well, that's interesting. I don't know why. I'll be honest, even when I was in fiction films, I love reading books, but I don't like the idea of, if I'm going to make a film, I need to read everything about someone. Because I come from a visual background, I'm like, I want to look at everything about them, because I've got to make a movie. I'm not trying to turn text into a film. And so along the way, there will be themes and issues. So with Maradona, this idea of racism, and this idea that all of these films, in a way, are about characters who are slightly like outsiders who are fighting a system, a powerful system that may be corrupt, or may be kind of trying to hold certain people down. For me, that's a theme that runs through all my films. Now, somewhere along the way, that's evidently a personal theme. They're all about family, they're all about home, they're all about kind of a sense of where do you belong, what do you stand for, these themes are things that I'm interested in. There are always kind of political issues of something that all comes out somewhere in the material. And I guess we are all different. We're all interested in different things. Though my job is then to say, I think this is interesting, I think this is a universal theme, or something that's interesting. It's about Diego Maradona, but he happens to be a footballer. It's about Italy, it's about racism, it's about a poor place, it's about coming from poverty, it's about Amy, you know, the media and fame, and how she was treated as a woman at a particular moment in time. If she'd have been a bloke, she would have been treated quite differently by, you know, the tabloids, but she was fair game. All of these things, I guess, are somewhere in the back of my head that I'm interested in, and the films almost become the motivation to deal with these subjects via a character. So it's all real, it all happened, but I can pick and choose what I'm going to go with. And, you know, there's a very different film to be made about Diego Maradona if you're a football fan. But for me, that I liked the idea that it's about 80s Italy, but if you go to a football match now, if you look at any England fans the other day, there's a scene in the film, if you've seen it, of England fans. It's in there for a reason. I'm a football fan. I've been to England matches. I don't go to them in a hurry. I've been, you know, at the old Wembley in an England game where 80,000 people are singing, you know, I'd rather be a Paki than whoever they're playing. So that was what it was like to be a fan of football in that period of time. And that one shot shows you the idiots that, unfortunately, go to England games. That's why I'm much happier being a Liverpool fan.
Maybe this is a perfect time now to look back at a clip from Senna.
Yeah.
It is kind of one of the key themes that you've just talked about in terms of being an outsider and being kind of a victim of kind of the pressures that being...
And I thought this scene, I love this scene because this is like... when we were making Senna, people literally would say, why are you making a film about racing driver? And also, I was making feature films. Why are you doing a documentary? Are you mad? What happened? What went wrong? And I was like, oh, well, I think this could be quite good. And I think he's amazing. And so the idea of how do you show it? I don't want people telling you this. You've got to show it. The footage has to tell you the story. He has to tell you the story. So like, if there was a kind of microcosm or a kind of short example of the power of speaking up, if you believe in something and you speak up, you can make a difference. If you're in the room and you hear something and you're not comfortable with it, and everyone else goes along, and you go, actually, I'm not cool with you saying what you just said, that's why you have to make a difference. So if you're a brown person making films, and I've worked on feature films where, you know, one of the first films I worked on, I was on a crew, I was a runner, and they were shooting a film, and they were darkening up white people to look brown for extras. I was like, what are you doing? And you could see they were like, oh, shut up, don't have a chip on your shoulder. We haven't got time, we haven't cast. I'm like, I can't believe you're doing that. And they said, we didn't find any brown Middle Eastern actors. I'm like, how hard did you try? We're in Harrow, in West London. I'm like, give me 2 minutes.
Yeah.
I went in the street,
Yeah.
do you want to be in a film? Yeah, come with me. And I brought them 2 people, a boy and a girl, and they were in the film. And it was just like, I just happened to be there, and I'm like, I can't take this. You can get rid of me, you can fire me, but I'm not going to let you do that. So that, for me, was like, that's who I am. I don't care. I don't need the job that much. I'm going to just open my mouth. And the thing that I liked about Senna, he always opened his mouth. And so we'll have a look at this scene. And this is not anything to do with cars and racing, but it obviously is as well. So I love that scene.
It is kind of
It's-
the most perfect scene.
You couldn't make it up.
No.
I mean, Senna was like, every day when we were working on that, there would be scenes that you look up and you go, you couldn't make that up. You could not write that better. You couldn't invent that character. Because if you were shooting that, you'd go, can you just tone it down a bit? You're a bit like over the top there, aren't you, Jean-Marie? And it's funny, you know. So when you are making a film about a racing driver who drives around 200 miles per hour, round and round in circles, you're not expecting it to be funny. And I like that. You want to laugh, you want to cry, you want to be taken on a journey. And there's so much about that I think is mad. I don't even know who shot that.
That credit to the cameraman.
There's a great sports camera person out there who was in that room, who was shooting this for no reason, because none of this was ever shown to anyone. The meetings, the drivers' meetings, were never publicized, right? They were never shown, which is why everyone could be honest, and before every race there would be a meeting. For some reason, someone was there to shoot it. Now, you know, how many of us, if our job at that stage of our lives was to shoot the drivers' meeting that's never going to be seen, would just do a wide shot and stand next to it and be looking at the sound levels? Yeah. That's one shot, one take. The meeting was 20 minutes. That's one continuous shot by one person who has no idea who's going to speak, where the reaction shot's going to be, and they just were picking up every single angle. This is in 1991. We're making a film in, when did I make Senna? 2009, 7, 9, 8? So I can't remember, I lost track of time. But it was a long time after, and we come across these tapes in the Formula One archives, which had never been open to anyone before. And we go in through thousands of hours, and you just think, actually, the racing is fine, but this is really interesting. I need to see him. And every meeting, he would do something like that. That's not a one-off. Senna, most of the drivers would go there, and they go, the race is 72 laps, okay, and it's going to do this, and it's going to, all right, and they'd walk out. And every meeting, he'd go, hold on, I've got one question. You can see that everyone, oh, God. Senna's at it again. And he's doing it for them. You know, he's worried about safety. So within this, it's funny. It's amazing technically. It's all backlit, but this person's getting shots of Prost and getting all the people. The person who puts his hand up is quite a funny guy. Anyway, so you don't know who he is. If you don't know anything about Formula One, it still gets you. And it's technically great filmmaking. And it's real. And I think when it works, it's like, I don't think a fiction film version of that is going to be as good as that. You know, and it's cut by Chris King. And so you've got like an amazing personality, you've got really well shot, it's real, there's one take, and when it works, I just think it's amazing. And I think that's where fiction is greater than, documentary is greater than fiction, because I don't believe it if it's too scripted. That's and I've gone through this existential crisis of like coming from drama and suddenly going, I can just always see the artifice, and I find myself not being moved or affected by films. I'm aware of the effects. I'm aware of the machine. I'm aware of the hair and makeup of someone saying, you know what, if I do this, I'll probably get an Oscar because, you know, I'm playing disabled or whatever their thing is that everyone... And then you look at docs and you go, that's real shit, man. Yeah. This is really affecting my head and my mind, and I'm never going to forget that film. And I think that's what happened somewhere during Senna.
You still bring the cinematic, though, to the documentary.
I think the fact that I come from that background, I'm obsessed with the technical aspects and the look, and I want to make things for the big screen. I want them to sound good. I want them to, you know, the music and the sound design and the effects.
Can we talk about the music a little bit? So kind of with Senna and with Maradona, Antonio Pinto.
So Antonio Pinto is a composer I work with. So before I did docs, I worked with a guy called Dario Marinelli, who the background of films that I loved were, I don't like temp music. I never used temp music. So when I was doing fiction films, I would always hire my composer, and I would say, try to write the music while I'm shooting, or look at the script and come up with some music so that I have an idea of music while I'm shooting. And on The Warrior, my first film, Dario did the music really early, so we were cutting with the music. And I've always tried to work that way, which is, Sergio Leone used to do that. He used to have his music played on set when he was shooting, so his films are almost like early music videos. They would play the music, and the actors would hear the music, and they would be moving in time to the score, and they would cut in time to that. So Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is a very good example, but Once Upon a Time in the West particularly. So I was inspired by that sort of style. When I was doing Senna, somehow Antonio Pinto heard about this. He's in São Paulo. He did City of God. He did Central Station. He's done Michael Mann films. He's a really great composer. He called me up. I said, I love Senna. I've got to do this movie. And at that point, we were still at that early stage. And I was like, I don't know if we can afford you, to be honest. It's not a big budget, but do me a favor. Write something. Write some music, send it to me, I'll start cutting with it. And if I start cutting with it, if it's good, which I'm hoping it will be, everyone will fall in love with it, then we'll have to pay for it, and we'll work it out. So I was like, I can't tell the producers now because I don't know if we can afford it, but if you write a cue, so he wrote a piece of music. He wrote a 7-minute piece of music with lots of movements without having looked at any footage, because I wasn't able to send him a cut yet. Technically, I couldn't show him anything. So just from his memories of Ayrton Senna, as someone who's Brazilian from São Paulo, watching him, being at the track, the main theme of Senna he wrote before he's seen a frame of the film. And that I then cut through, and at this point, this is before Chris King had started on the film, so I was doing a lot of the music, and there's a particular cue at the end of Senna, which is when, the very tragic part after when he dies, sorry if you haven't seen it, but there's a piece of music that I heard that's one of his old cues that I thought was amazing, which is from a film called Behind the Sun by Walter Salles, which I loved. And actually, that's from Behind the Sun is in the film, and it's one of those cues that I think is amazing, and we never ever came up with something better. But that all came from Antonio. So that's how it worked. So that worked on that. On Amy, obviously, we've got a musician, so it's different because at the time, people like Mark Ronson and people like that were saying, let me do the soundtrack. But I was like, it's got to be Amy's music, and the accompanying score has to be different.
Yeah.
And we went through a long kind of process of working, and all of this process is from the beginning of the edit onwards. We're talking about how to find the right piece of music. So then he did write the score, but it had to be very different to what Amy, because she's like, those are the songs, and we've got to work around that.
That was her narrative, but...
Yeah, and Chris King is fantastic. Technically, he's a fantastic editor, but he's brilliant with music. So he is really clever at molding it and recutting Antonio's pieces of music and put them in, and then we give them back to Antonio, and he reacts. And I suppose the same thing happened here. With this one, it was difficult because I never really got to sit down with Antonio. And we have some music that Chris found, kind of the early electronic-y stuff, the kind of disco-y stuff, if you've heard, is all kind of Chris King. We're all people of a certain age, and we wanted that kind of vibe. And the interesting thing is Antonio does the kind of emotional stuff, and I wanted to hold that back. So what did happen on Maradona, we had 2 cues for the opening. One from Antonio and one which Chris King found by a DJ, and we literally mixed both. It's quite an expensive way of making a decision, I have to say. But the cue was coming in really late, and I just was like, I really love this cue, but I don't know if it's right. So we literally said, let's mix. And that opening sequence, if you've seen Maradona, it's a mad, crazy French Connection, Italian Job kind of action scene of driving, and there's a lot going on. Really complicated to mix. And we literally ended up doing both. And I said, let's do both. Not think about it, let's move on, let's do the rest of the film, and then I'll watch the film once we've mixed the whole film, and I'm going to make a call on which one we go with. And in the end, we went with the one that's in the film, which I think works, and I love it. And we hold back Antonio until we have a flashback, and we talk about him growing up.
As it is in a way, so you talk in the film, this is not giving away any spoilers as well, but the two his trainer talks about being the two people within
Yeah.
one person, being Diego and being Maradona, and the music really
Yeah.
helps with kind of the parts that are Diego.
It's part of
parts
it,
that are
exactly. It's the
Maradona.
fun-loving kind of like partying, and then there's the other stuff. And so that was always in my mind with Diego Maradona, was there's always going to be these two sides. Throughout it, we want to kind of like have kind of yin and yang element, angel, devil.
We're going to skip right the way back to the beginning now, to your first fiction feature, The Warrior. How many people have seen The Warrior here? Just a couple.
See,
Okay,
that's the
watch
thing.
it. And this is the reason you were hired.
I started making docs about famous people.
Yeah. This one, 2 BAFTAs. But this is the reason you got hired to direct, one of the reasons.
do Senna.
To choose Senna.
Yeah, it was a really interesting one because there's a kind of spiritual element running through The Warrior, and that was an important part. His faith for Senna was an important part of his story, and I think the producer, James Gay-Rees, that was one of the reasons he thought, would you be interested? He knew I was into sport, but Manish and James, two of the producers on that, kind of thought maybe that would give me an understanding of Senna's character, which I have to say it did. It was.
Let's take a look at The Warrior. So for those that don't know, the film centres round on Irfan Khan's character, who plays the warrior, the title character, in a unknown time period in India. He is kind of
It was me trying to do a samurai film. I'm quite into Japanese movies. I was like, I'm going to write a samurai film for my first film. But then I was like, I've never been to Japan, and I don't speak Japanese, so it's going to be quite hard to get done. So then we rewrote it and set it in India, because my previous short film, my student film, The Sheep Thief, had been made in India in the desert and had won a prize at Cannes and had been quite successful, and so it was easier for people to kind of make that fit. My short film cost like £25,000, and then The Warrior was like £2.5 million. So that's the leap you make from making a short to a feature, and so it was an easier sell to get the funding and for someone to believe in me. Irfan, I don't know if you recognize him, but he's now like in Jurassic Park and Spider-Man and The Lunchbox, and that was his first international film. And at the time when I met Irfan, he was thinking of quitting acting. He never got a role. He was always, because he has an amazing but an unusual face, he was never pretty enough to be a movie star in India, he felt. So he was giving it up. And I met him in Bombay, and we had a chat, and he was the one person who sort of knew about the film references that I was talking about. He'd seen kind of European films. So we got along, and then I thought he just had such a great face, because as you can see, there's no dialogue. That film has very little dialogue. And it was an amazing kind of experience working on it. Really tough film.
It's epic, though, in terms of it's a very ambitious first.
Yeah, even my agent was like, this is great. He read the script, but this is your third film. This is impossible to do as your first film. But nobody liked the ideas I had for my first film, so I was like, why don't I just do the third one? And so, which we were able to do. And in the UK, it was won 2 BAFTAs. It was amazing. It was an incredible experience. It was really interesting, what goes on in the world, because that was the film where also, it got picked up internationally by Miramax, which everyone was like, great. And I was like, oh, God, I don't know if this is going to be good. So, the whole thing that goes on around the world. I had my meeting with Harvey Weinstein. I've met Harvey many times, but that was an experience of me meeting with Harvey Weinstein and him basically saying, because he is, as we now know who he is, and we all knew, if you don't do your next 3 films with me, I'll never release it. And it never got released, because I was like, well, I don't really want to work like that. I'll do 1 film with you, 1 at a time. And he was like, well, why should I put any effort into it? So he bought it for quite a lot of money and said it was great, but then never released it in America. So it was that whole thing of that's how, welcome to show business. That's the difference between making shorts and making features. You're now messing with the big boys, and it doesn't matter how much time you spent and how personal a story is. Anthony Minghella, he was wonderful, really liked this film, and he said, let me talk to Harvey. I'll try. So I think it was 7 years after it was made, he did a tiny release, because Anthony Minghella put a lot of pressure on Harvey, but that's the only time it got shown in America. But even now, it's parts of the world people want to show, because Irfan's now become really famous. They can't show it. So that's the journey of making
It is
movies.
available, though, on DVD.
BFI,
Yeah.
I think I've got it now. Yeah.
Um,
Is there any questions on anything
Yeah,
we've
sorry.
talked about
Yeah.
up to now?
I've got loads, okay. The lady in the front here, and should we get a microphone to this gentleman here as well? Thank you.
I was just wondering if there are any decisions that you made that you regret, or like what mistake you've learned the most from in your career.
Mistakes that I've made that I regret. I'm sure there's many. Okay, I can comment on it. I mean, I'm not that kind of guy normally. I have to say that I don't worry about. I make many mistakes. I've made lots of films that didn't work, or and if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. I'm more of that way. After this film, partly linked to, weird enough, you weren't set up, were you? No. But that film it did well in the UK, but honestly, I never got a call at the time. It was the beginning of the film council. This is the truth. I never got a call saying, what do you want to do next? We'll give you some money. Never ever got any money from the film council. Never got any money from BFI as a writer, actually, or whatever they were called before. And so I ended up doing a film in America, and I made a film after this because it was the only one I could get. And it was an awful experience. It was a nightmare. So I did a film in the US, and it was like everything I don't want to do with my life. And it was that. It was a turning point because something bad happens, something good comes out of it. So that was the point when I came home, and girlfriend of the time was like, why don't we get married? I don't like being in LA. And so we got married, and that kind of changed our life. But also I realized I'm really happy being European, being based in London. I love London. I love working all over the world. If I need to go to the US, I can work there. I don't want to live there. And I can go and work in Asia. If I want to work in Asia, I can do films in Europe. So that experience, for a lot of people, it's like the dream to go and live in an LA or somewhere. I love New York more personally, but really, if you're in New York, you might as well be in London. So there was a film that I made that was a nightmare. Then I did another film called Far North, which was almost like right at the beginning when we first started talking and doing these things, which was a really tough film. It's a mad film. It has its fans, but this is the tester. Who's seen Far North? There you go. Right? Thank you. Let's hang out. I won't ask if you like it, but anyway, you saw it. That's the thing. You could spend years making these films, and they just don't get seen. And so that was the films that I was interested in, I suppose, at that stage, making fiction films, were I'm interested in world cinema. Now, what's interesting is then I switched to making Senna. For me, there's a hell of a lot of Senna that's not in English. No one ever called it a foreign language film. You've seen Maradona, a lot of you, right? Was it a big problem with reading the subtitles? There's quite a lot of subs, but that's a foreign language film, right? And it can work. It is possible. So I found a way to make the films that I like watching and themes that I'm interested in, and to have some sort of creative control in the process, because now I work in a way where I don't have a script, and I don't have to sit there doing kind of development meetings, and I don't have to answer every few months to some exec. I kind of get left alone to make the films, and they've sort of, touch wood, previous ones have worked. I don't know what's going to happen with this one, but they've done all right. And so all of that has come out of the experience that you kind of go through, and how you somehow have to learn. And like Diego Maradona, no matter how many times they kick you or try and break your legs, you have to get up and you go again. And you keep fighting, and you find the way to survive. And the only answer is just to keep making films. So there will be lots of cock-ups and mistakes, and I've made many, but don't ever let it get you down. And don't get too carried away if your films do really well, because I put as much effort into the ones that no one's seen as I did in the ones that a lot of people have seen. And so that's quite an important thing, I'd say, as well.
Hi. Thank you. Just regarding the three documentaries you've made are extraordinary. Just extraordinary films, and hearing about your process has been not having a script, not having any paper, has been fascinating. And I have
a whiteboard, which is really good to have, scribbling down, and then you can rub it out and scribble it down. So I always I have some process, something, but just for me, nothing that I have to present.
Well, hearing about this has been fascinating, especially considering the scale and the achievements of these films has been really interesting. My question is, have you ever been, in these three particular films, have you ever been in the edit at a point. There's always a point where you get to the edit where you've got a rough cut and then you've got to show it to people and you've got to go back in and dig and all that. Have you ever been in a situation with any of those 3 films where you've sat back and you've thought, oh no,
all the time.
This is a disaster.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing, and have had a massive crisis of confidence.
Yes, honestly, and often. And really, I would just say the way my brain works, you have to use it. So what I started to do on Senna, and I realize now I didn't do it enough with the dramas when I was doing that, but with Senna, because of the nature of these stories and because of how much footage one has, they're really long. There's a point when they're like 5 hours, and I was like, let's watch it. Let's get a space. Let's all sit down and watch it together. It was never like, oh, I'm going to watch it on my own. And that thing of like, this is my baby, and when it's ready, I'll show it to you. I was able to free myself up on Senna to say, let's just all, the crew, let's just go and watch it. Let's project the awful 6-hour version. Bring a packed lunch. And we would sit there and we'd watch it, and everyone's like, oh my God, this is a mess. And I'm kind of grinning going, I think there's a film in here. I really do. I know it's a mess. I know it looks like crap. Literally, I'm projecting 6 hours of YouTube clips with logos and adverts and pop-ups and stuff. And I'm like, but at the ending, you look around and people are moved. You go, there's something there, isn't it? Even though it looks crap and there's no real music and stuff, there's something in it. And then you show a shorter version, and at each screening, invite someone. You've got to have your trusted friends. You've got to know how to go through the process and say, who do I show up to at this stage, and who do I save up? That's really important, but I'll show it to you later. And that's it can get quite touchy, because people meet at parties and go, why have they seen it and I haven't? And you go, well, because I'm sort of saving you up. Yeah, right. You go, no, I've now got a group of people that I know are really good for that awful first cut, and certain people I show when it's like 3.5 hours long, and then other people when I'm nearly there, and I screen them a lot. And we did it with Senna, and it was great because with Senna, it was always like a crowd pleaser. No matter what form, he draws you in. And it was kind of magical because we'd have a room, and there may be 15 people in the room, and we'd press play, and then when you turned on the lights, where did they come in? There's 20 people in the room. And then if there were 40 people in the room, at the end, there were 70 people in the room. Something about him meant that people walking past would kind of just want to watch. People who'd seen it before would want to watch it again. And that just carried on all the way through the process of making a film, right to the end. Whenever we had festivals, there'd be people in the aisles. And there was something about him that draws people in. And it's one of the films that people watch again and again. And you know the story, you know the ending, but you still go with it. So we did that a lot. And I think that's important. And in those screenings, there are awful screenings. There are, with Maradona, there are people here from the crew. They will remember the screening it's about 15 months ago. There was this stupid idea that we thought we were aiming for Cannes last year. And I was, in denial, thinking it's possible. And then we had a screening of a film that was about 3 hours long. And kind of distributors came and financiers came and everyone came. It was a bad screening. It was a bad screening. And I do generally, at the end of it, sit at the front and say, what do you think? And people tear it apart. On all of the films, there'll be a screening where people tear it apart. I don't mind, because I'm now confident enough in myself and the team and what we're doing. We'll get there, but you have to go through these processes. And sometimes you get down, but you just think there's something in here. We just haven't found it. We haven't made the tough calls and whatever. So that idea of constantly showing it to people is what I would really recommend. And you get the pressure off. You hear recurring. You have to be strong enough to not listen to every stupid note, though. I think I've got friends who have tried it, and I feel, listen too much to what everyone's saying. And so someone says this, and they'll go off and do it. And they don't literally do what they're saying, just kind of get the gist of what people are whinging about. That's important. Senna, there was a moment on Senna where, people close to me were saying, you should just walk away and quit. It's too much of an awful experience. And there was tough times while we were cutting that film, as there are on all films. That was the one where, there were moments when I just thought, I don't know if I'm going to get through this. And, your hair starts falling out and all that sort of stuff. We got there in the end, and the finished product meant it was worth the pain. They're always painful, though.
I think we might be out of time. But I know that we haven't
Sorry, I thought,
we haven't
I guess I
shown
meant
the
to.
clip of Amy, and I feel that we
Can we finish
should,
with that?
Can we? Because it's such a great clip.
Let's
we'll
do that.
Finish on the clip of Amy.
Bit heavy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mad, isn't it, what we do? I mean, I know. That's the other thing we haven't talked about. It's just like how the people, you get to know these people. They become part of your life and your experience, and you make friends with people and other people you might not have got along with. But particularly that film, I bump into people all the time who are in that film. So it's not, that's the difference between fiction and documentaries of, you know, there are real people out there, real lives that you become a part of and change and affect and, yeah.
And it's close to home, it's London, and it's
London.
English language. So kind of in terms of kind of perhaps the proximity to...
I mean, that one is different because of just Juliet, who you're hearing there. You know, the interviews with Juliet and Lauren. You know, this film was started only a year after Amy had died. And that's the difference between Senna and Maradona, where so much time has passed. That was a really raw film. And the experience of making it was really heavy and emotional. And just listening to that interview again, I can remember doing it. And, you know, we were all crying when we were doing the interviews. That happened all the time. And it was felt, the process of, the reason why I now like not trying to be too tight with a script or something before you make the film, because the process of making a film, I think, affects and should inform how the film ends up. You do become a part of the story and a bit of the character, and what you feel, I think, should come across. So it was a really tough, raw experience making it, and I wanted the audience to feel some of that. And so, you know, Juliet and Lauren, the friends, would often be crying when I was interviewing them, and the voices in the film often are that first interview. I didn't do any pre-interviews. It was like the first time we meet has to be somewhere where we can talk safely and privately, and you can get it off your chest. And they cry through quite a lot of the film, which, you know, normally you think, oh, you shouldn't do that. But actually it was honest. And the idea was just, can we get that rawness and honest and the pain of that life of this amazing girl into the film? But it was heavy. It was a heavy film. Anyway.
Thank you all
Thanks.
for coming. Thank you, Asif Kapadia.